Now, allow me to introduce the dedicated York International team. First, we have Yojal Lee, who is the International Student Experience Coordinator, overseeing the orientation and transition portfolio. And as previously mentioned, hi, I'm Pari. I'm a student coordinator here at York International. And here's a quick overview of what we will be covering today. We will begin with a warm welcome and introduction to York International, followed by an overview of the support provided by our international student advisors and immigration specialists. Next, we'll walk through the documents you'll need for entry into Canada, offer key arrival tips, and highlight important study permit conditions. We'll wrap up with a Q&A session and share some details on upcoming pre-arrival sessions and events. And now I'll be handing it over to Gilbert from the IECA team to get us started.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome in. We're super excited to have you join us in this webinar today. We'll be spending the next hour or so talking about how to better prepare yourself for your arrival to Canada. So if you've already received your study permit, congratulations. We'll be going through all of those stuff. So my name is Gilbert Otime, and I'm currently one of the international student and immigration specialists at York International. I am a licensed regulated Canadian immigration consultant, ICIC. This is a designation for persons who are licensed to give immigration advice in Canada. And at York International, we have advisors here who have different designation. You can see that on the screen right there. So all of us are licensed to give immigration advice on variety of issues, such as study permit, temporary residence visas, working on or off campus, co-op work permit, and postgraduate work permit, and some limited capacity permanent residence too as well. Here's an important reminder. Only a licensed person can or should provide immigration advice. So why is this important? Immigration law is complex and each person's situation is unique. So always seek advice or information from authorized sources such as an immigration lawyer or an immigration consultant. We all have friends and families who have gone through the immigration process before and are eager to share their experiences or their opinion or their personal experience with you. But please be careful about the information that you receive and also the information that is shared to as well. All right. And always check if that person is licensed before you proceed. All right. So the second thing is in terms of our service here. So just a general scope of service. So first, the information in this presentation is just general legal information, not legal advice. And when you talk about legal advice, it's typically tailored to an individual specific circumstances. So just be mindful of that too as well. The information in this presentation is current as of today. We all know that immigration rules are always changing. So always refer to Immigration Canada's main website, so www.canada.ca for most up-to-date information. And also, second, also be aware of unauthorized individuals trying to gain access to your personal information or financial information. If you ever receive any communication by phone, email, text, or someone else claiming to be from immigration department or any other government department, such as, Department of Justice, for example, and demanding you to make any payment, it's likely a scam. So just be careful of that too as well. All right, so how do you get in contact with us? First of all, we don't act as legal representative for students, but we're here to help provide guidance and information. We do have an event calendar with all our webinar sessions that are free for all students to attend. We can put the link in the chat for the calendar, and you can bookmark that page. It's a very important resource for you too as well. We also do deliver regular presentation focused webinars on topics such as, how to renew your study permit extension, how to apply for a co-op work permit as well. So bookmark that link, and it's going to become very useful for you in the future too as well. We want to help to make immigration-related matters very easy for you to understand and also deal with, so that you can focus on what is more important. So obtaining a higher education, an exciting one too as well. At York, as a York University student, so you do have advising options, right? So we have virtual book advising sessions too as well. We also do have an immigration workroom, which is typically on Mondays and Fridays. This session is an opportunity for you to work on any type of immigration application in real time with an international student advisor. You come along with your questions, you come along with your resources and your materials, and then we assist you along the way too as well. Also, the virtual drop-in session, no appointment is needed. This is typically for very quick immigration-related inquiries. So during the drop-in sessions, would ask you a range of questions, and then would help provide you answers to those questions too as well. And all of this information is on our event calendar, our YI calendar too as well. And then our last resource is email, which should be the last resource for you if you want to reach out to us. Okay, so at York International, as I mentioned, we do provide a variety of services at York International. So we have the UHIP, which is the insurance services that as an international student you do get. We also do provide a variety of orientation services through our student programming too as well. And I just briefly touched on our immigration advising services too as well. And then the global option, which is also an opportunity that you can take advantage of in your second year. If you wanted to have exchange opportunities, we have that resource for students too. All right, so before we jump into the main purpose of this presentation, I would like to go through some important documents that hopefully you would have received at this point. So the first one is the letter of introduction, aka the port of entry letter. This document is sent from the visa office to confirm approval of one, either your study permit or your work permit. When you arrive in Canada, you have to present this letter or at the point of entry, so at a POE, right? You're also going to be issued a temporary residence visa. Some of you might know that as a visitor's visa too as well. And this is what authorizes your entry into Canada. Applicants from non-visa required country will receive an ETA, electronic travel authorization approval. This is automatically linked to your passport. You would find the ETA number or the validity on your letter of your introduction too as well. It usually allows for multiple entry during the validity period, to keep that in mind as well. All right, so the next thing you need to know is that based on the examination at the point of entry, you're going to issue your study permit, which is the last document you see on your screen. We highly recommend that you hold off booking any tickets before you travel to Canada. Processing time for applications are sometimes fast or slow depending on the region or the country in which you are applying from. So please wait for that process to be done before you book your flight ticket too as well. All right. And the next thing is what documents to carry with you. So having the following documents available is important. Do not place them in your checked luggages, because if you're going through Canadian customs, you don't have access to your checked luggage, right? So for example, your passport is very important. You need to have that with you. Your letter of introduction, aka your port of entry letter, your temporary residence visa, which is typically in your passport, or your electronic travel authorization, ETA. Also, have a copy of your York University offer of acceptance, your proof of enrollment if you have not, begun your program remotely already, or you have not registered for your program, you wouldn't have your proof of enrollment. But if you're registered and you have a copy of that, you can also have that readily available too. You can find your letter of acceptance under admission letter on MyFile. You should be very familiar with that portal by now. Also, your proof of enrollment can also be downloaded in the link. We'll put all of that in the chat for you too as well. All right. So the next thing you also need to be aware is you have to demonstrate that you have enough money to support yourself during your stay in Canada. This document, you've already submitted it to IRCC to support your original application when you applied for your study permit. In some cases, where there's longer processing time, the financial documents might be a little bit outdated, and it will be advisable to get updated copies from your financial institution when you do travel to Canada. Make sure that you have a clear, legible printout of your bank statement for 3 to 4 months. If you have already purchased a GIC, guaranteed investment certificate, make sure you have a copy of that too as well. Your scholarship letters, have a copy of that too. If you've already prepaid your tuition, you can download a copy of that and have a copy with you too as well. Now, the other thing is medicals, right? So medicals are typically valid for 1 year. Some of you might be required to have medical done based on the country that you're coming from, or if you've stayed in a country for more than 6 months. Make sure you carry a copy of that proof of medicals you have with you when you travel to as well. Also, another thing you need to be aware is the address where you'll be staying, right? Important phone numbers. Whether you be living on campus, off campus, you'll be asked to sometimes fill out a custom declaration form. If you have a contact of someone picking you up, please make sure you have that phone number just in case the examination takes too long and you want to inform them that it's the process is taking longer than usual. You can do that. Typically, there's Wi-Fi at the airport that you can take advantage of. Other things that would be a good optional documents to have will be travel insurance documents to cover your trip to Canada, medical or immunization records, and also some cash in Canadian dollars. You should have that too as well. All right, so just a quick reminder here is it's good to have this document both in paper or in digital format as well. So having them in paper would allow you to have them readily available. I know that a lot of you might have this document on your cell phone, but anything could happen, right? You could run out of battery, you might have connection issues. So it's good to have those two options just so you're covered too as well. Also, make sure you have access to your passport at York MyFile for incoming students. This is the two most important websites in any case, because sometimes IRCC or the border immigration officers would ask you to log into those files just for them to verify that the document is actually there and it's the same as well. Okay, so that's really important. All right, so the next thing that I would caution you is plan your luggage, right? So know the airline that you're traveling with, what your limit on your luggage is, right? There are some items that are allowed for you to carry in your luggage, and there are certain things that are restricted. We're talking about, tobacco, alcohol, guns. There's some food or animal or plant products that are not allowed. So make sure you're checking IRCC's website, and we can put the link to that in the chat for you too as well. Another thing is, please do not carry another person's luggage or baggage if you don't know them or you're not traveling with them, right? This is a common security trips for any travel. So don't do it, right? The other thing too you need to be aware of is that there are certain liquids and the quantity that you're allowed to bring. So you only need 100 ml and carry on luggage. Anything else should go in your main check-in luggage too as well. You can also attach an address tag to each of your piece of luggages with your name and address of your destination. Make sure you keep all important documents, medication, expensive items such as your camera, your jewelry, your laptop, your phone, your credit card, your cash with you in your carry-on rather than pack them in your checked luggage because you don't have access to those items and you don't know what's going on with that. So and in some cases, sometimes what I do personally is I add an air tag if you can, if you have access to, you can put air tag in your main luggage so that you can track if your bags are following you or if they've reached the destination of your final destination. So that's an option too as well. All right. So let's talk about the role of ICC and CPSA. So we'll start with ICC. So Canada Immigration has two main branches. ICC stands for Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada. So they are responsible for developing immigration and refugee policies and also processing permanent and temporary residence applications and also the issuance of visas or permits. So when you have submitted your application, it was an ICC officer that reviewed the application and also rendered a decision on that application, right? And then on the other hand, the second part is when you arrive inside Canada, you'll be meeting a CBSA officer. And CBSA stands for Canada Border Services Agency, and they are responsible for carrying out enforcement functions, conducting entry examinations, conducting investigations of those believed to be inadmissible to Canada, and also preparing cases for presentation at the Immigration and Refugee Board, IRB, and also detailing or removing individuals from Canada if they do not meet the entry requirement. It's a CBSA officer that will make the final decision about whether or not you qualify to enter Canada or not. Okay, so those are the two distinctions of the ICC and also CBSA. All right, so what to expect when you arrive in Canada? So typically, September, August, September is typically a peak travel season. So you might expect, longer border processing wait times in order to complete your paperwork, right? So all passengers must complete an entry examination at customs before proceeding to the baggage claim area, right? So we talked about this. So please make sure that the important documents that I talked about in the previous slide, you have them with you and not in your check luggages too as well. Okay. The second thing is the border services officers would direct you where you have to go to complete your study permit application. So depending on the airport in which you come, so some people might arrive through Toronto Pearson Airport. Some of you might go through Vancouver or Montreal, depending on your first point of entry into the country. So make sure you watch for the signage that would direct you to your designated area too as well, okay? So at the entry examination, you'll be asked basic questions about your identity, your citizenship, your residence, your purpose of entry, your length of stay, etc., right? You can also be asked more in-depth questions about your eligibility, your admissibility too as well. So keep that in mind and make sure that you understand what went into your application, especially for those who used an agent or a consultant or a lawyer, and you are not part of that process. You need to understand what went through your application as well. So the study permit will be issued to you at the conclusion of your entry examination, right? So let's talk a little bit about entry examination, right? We've talked about the basic questions. We've also talked about in-depth questions, right? What could that look like? These are things that you should expect or at least know about your application and your identity, for example, right? So primary examination. right? So this, I'll just go through a list of examples that you should expect. Okay. So identity, what is your name, right? Your citizenship, what's your citizenship? These are things you should know. Your country of residence, where do you reside? What's your intention, your purpose of your trip to Canada, your length of stay, how long it's your program, if your program is 2 years or your program is 4 years. These are things you need to know. Employment, do you intend to take employment or seek employment whilst in Canada? How would you answer those questions? This is what you need to understand. International students are allowed to work on campus and off campus or participate in co-op or internship while studying at a designated learning institution. At York University, we don't have co-op in the first year. The other thing is you need to understand is that you cannot start working if you haven't begun your program, right? So for example, if you're arriving 2 or 3 weeks early and your program is starting, let's say September 3rd, right? You cannot start working if you haven't started that program. And some students in the past have made a mistake where they arrive in Canada, get their study permit, and then they see the conditions listed on their study permit saying they're eligible to work on campus and off campus, right? You have to be very careful, right? Because that would make you breach the conditions of those study permits. And you want to remain compliant whilst you're in Canada too as well. Right. So the second thing is secondary examination. And I can tell you every international student is going to go through the secondary examination. So this is what you need to know. International students entering the first time automatically, you go through secondary examination. Officers at the secondary examination will ask you more in-depth questions that are not part of the primary examination that are listed, right? Officers will make an assessment on your admissibility to Canada on medical grounds, on security grounds, and also criminal grounds too as well, right? So even though all of these things were done as part of your study permit application, remember you are still subject to examination at the point of entry, right? So once all of that is done, that's when your study permit will be issued to you as well, right? So how do you interact with CBSA officers? So I'm going to give you a couple of tips here. It's always in your best interest to answer these questions truthfully, right? There's something called misrepresentation, and this could be either giving false information or omitting certain information that could be a serious immigration offense and could be also subject to serious fines depending on the gravity of the situation, right? This is where that I mentioned that, because of if you used an agent or a family member did your application for you, before you travel, it's a good time to get a copy of your application so that you can sort of familiarize yourself with the information on there. The officer sees you as the client, right? You're expected to know what went into your application. Right? For example, what is your program? And you don't know what your program is, right? And that's a problem. What is the expected duration of your program? And you don't know how long your program is, right? How much is your tuition for 1 year? So just to give you an example of that too as well. Only answer questions you've been asked and to the point, right? I don't know, I don't know about you, but anytime I go to a point of entry or a border or an airport and I'm speaking to an immigration officer, I'm nervous. It's normal, right? The CBS officers, would ask you questions, and sometimes you get to talk too much. Just remember, these officers are sometimes busy. They have a long queue behind them and they want to go through a lot of passengers as fast as they can. They get so many passengers even every day, right? So try and answer the question straight to the point. If you don't know the answers or you're not sure, you can usually say, I don't know, I think, or, I'm not sure, right? so that the officer knows that you're giving your best educated guess. If you do not understand the question or you did not hear the question properly, right, don't make assumptions. You can ask the officer to rephrase or repeat, right? Sometimes you're tired after a long flight and, you might just need a minute or two to adjust. It's okay because, jet lag, sometimes it affects all of us too, right? So again, I keep emphasizing this. Make sure you have your document readily accessible, right? Don't wait because you have some time to get yourself in order, right? So get all those documents ready whilst you're in line so that when you get to the officer, you have everything to present to them, right? And also we talked about having digital option and we talked about already having paper options, right? So keep that in mind. The last tip that I'm going to give you on this point is that be respectful and cordial, right? Some officers might be friendly. Some of them might be very strict. You don't know which officer you're going to get, right? Some of them, I don't want, some of them probably walk up on the wrong side, but you might never know. So just be respectful, polite. They're all trying to get their job done. Right. So that would be my advice on this tip. Right. So the last thing on this is things to check on your study permit. Finally, you have answered everything correctly. The officer would issue your study permit. But before you leave the airport, there are a few things that I need you to check, and this is really, really important. So there are certain key things that you need to keep your eyes on, right? So I'm gonna go through a number of things here that are very important, right? So on the top of your study permit contains your personal details, right? Including your name, your date of birth, your country of birth, your country of citizenship, and your passport number. It's possible for an ICC officer to make mistakes. They are not perfect. We're all human beings, right? So you need to ensure that the information on there is correct. If you catch those mistakes, let the officer know right away. Because once you leave the airport, it will be too late. You can go back. You would have to do an amendment of your study permit, which would take time and also cost you money, right? The second thing is the duration of your study permit. There's no right or wrong answer with that specific expiration date. Usually, a study permit would be issued to you for the duration of your program plus 90 days, right? Unless your passport is expiring, less than the duration of your program, right? So CBS officers have the discretion to determine the length of your authorized stay. So at the bottom of your study permit, right? I'm going to show you where that is too as well. Let's move this along. Right. So at the bottom of your study permit, there are certain conditions listed on your document that allows you to either work on campus or off campus, meeting eligibility. So it will tell you if you can work online or offline, online or off campus if you are meeting eligibility. So make sure that it's listed there and it's on the very bottom of your study permit. It will say conditions right there. All right, so that is important. If it says you can only work on campus, it means that you don't have eligibility to work off campus. If it says you can only work off campus, it means you don't have eligibility to work on campus. You have to make sure that those two distinctive are listed on the conditions of your study permit, right? The other thing that you need to keep in mind is your expiration date. You have a reminder system for when your document expires, right? Because if you ask me when my passport expires, I actually don't know. I have to constantly go and check, right? So there's some tools and there's some methods that a lot of people use to remind themselves about this important date, right? Some people use a Gmail calendar, some people use a paper calendar or a sticky note and they stick it to their fridge. Some people use their parents as a reminder system. There are different ways of you having a reminder, just don't tattoo it on yourself. That's an option, but don't do it. Another thing is once you receive a reminder, it's always recommended, right, that you start preparing 3 months ahead, right? So let's say your study permit is expiring soon and ICC gave you a very limited time, right? So because your passport is expiring. So you do renew your passport and then you start preparing to extend your study permit 3 months ahead, right? Make sure that you have it done before the expiration date, because if you do that, you have maintained implied status. What does this mean? It means that according to the law, provided you've extended your application before it expires, you are covered under law and you can continue to study. You can continue to have work authorization until a decision is made on that application, right? In case for some reason you forgot and your study permit expires, you have 90 days to restore your status, right? But what does that mean? It means you cannot study. It means you cannot work. You have to stop everything and wait for that application to be approved before you can continue, you can re-engage in those study or work authorization, which has impact on your status, right? That is why it's important to start preparing 3 months ahead, okay? All right. So let's talk about maintaining full-time status whilst at York University. Now that you have your study permit, everything is good to go. As an international student, it's important to maintain full-time status, right? If you wish to work on campus or off campus whilst you study, right? There's some people who, just want to take part-time studies, and that's okay too. But there are implications. There are eligibility requirements for other programs. And if you want to be eligible for those programs, you have to pay attention to this aspect too as well, right? So after your program is done, you'll be eligible to apply for something called a postgraduate work permit. So a PGWP is an open work permit that allows international students to remain and work in Canada after completing their studies. That work experience you obtain through the PGWP may help support your application for permanent residence in Canada. No, it may, okay, because there are different eligibility requirements and also policies keep changing. So just keep that in mind, right? So whilst it is possible, again, for you to be part-time and compliant with your study permit, you need to speak to an international student advisor. So in the beginning of the slide, I showed you a page. We have 5 immigration advisors that you can speak to, right, before you drop to part-time status, so that you make an informed decision as to whether this is best for you or not, right? So to be considered full-time, you have to be enrolled in a minimum of 9 credits every fall and 9 credits every winter semester, right? I didn't say academic year, right? So it's broken down into per semesters. And typically we have 3 semesters in the year, but we're not going to count summer as a summer, because summer doesn't impact your eligibility for PGWP, right? If you're taking a year-long course, so let's say you're registered in a year-long course, that year-long course is for 2 semesters. So what happens is that it's divided into 2, right? So let's say the year-long course is 6 credits. So you divide that into 2. 3 credits goes to the fall, 3 credits goes to the winter term, because it's a year-long credit course, right? So I'll explain that again. To be considered full-time, you must be enrolled in a minimum of 9 credits for the fall and 9 credits for the winter, okay? So here's a quick quiz for you. So I'm going to launch a poll on the Zoom platform. So which scenario is considered full-time? Scenario A, I have 6 credits in the fall and 12 credits in the winter. Is that full-time? Scenario B, I have 9 credits and 6 fall credits and 3 winter credits. Is that full-time? Scenario C, I have 9 fall credits, 9 winter credits, and 3 summer credits. Is that full-time? So let's give it a few seconds here whilst we check which of these scenarios are correct. And let's see if you guys have really been paying attention. Okay, about 57, 60% people have participated, which is good. We'll give it a few more seconds here and see which options people are going with. Okay, so I have 62%. All right, okay. All right, so awesome. So about, okay, I'm going to end the poll now. All right, so about 91% of you guys chose scenario C, 4% chose scenario B, and 4% chose scenario A. So the correct answer is scenario C. So for those of you who got it, good job on that. All right. So as you can see, let me stop sharing that. All right. So as you can see, in scenario A, students are part-time in the fall and full-time in the winter, right? And then scenario B, students are registered in 6 credits in the fall, which is part-time, and 3 credits in the winter, which is also part-time. So scenario C, students are registered in 9 credits in the fall, which is full-time, and 9 credits in the winter, which is also full-time. So summer is optional and it's not counted. It's just there to throw you off, right? So that's something to think about. Now, when it comes to academic breaks, so academic break is a period that is common to all students in most programs, and I'll explain that in a second, right? So you're not required to take courses during an scheduled academic break. So this includes winter closures when the school is closed, and also summer, and this is mostly for undergraduate programs and also reading week, right? For the School of Continuing Studies. So if you're in the School of Continuing Studies, the break between courses in your program is not considered, an official break, right? So just keep that in mind, right? So during an academic break, for scheduled break for undergraduate programs, you may be enrolled in part-time courses or full-time or not at all. And this would not impact your study permit compliance or your PGWP, your postgraduate work permit. Okay, so that's just the difference. And don't worry, during the orientation, when you arrive inside Canal, we will talk about this again. We'll keep re-emphasizing what it is to maintain full-time status. So just in case the information is a lot, so would remind you again. All right. So working on or off campus. So those of you who might be interested in working, this is what you need to know. So if your conditions on your study permit allows you to work, then you can go to Service Canada and apply for something called a social insurance number. You can do that in person or you can do that online. It's a 9-digit number that you can give to your employer so that they know that you're authorized to work in Canada. It's just a payroll system, and it's also another measure that authorizes you to work. It's not an immigration document, but it's for payroll and taxation purposes, right? Also, you have to be full-time in order to be able to work, right? So on-campus work, you have to have a valid study permit. You have to have a valid social insurance number. The study permit has to have those conditions listed on there, right? You have to be full-time except in your final semester. So if it's in your last semester, you don't have to maintain full-time status, but you're allowed to work. You have work eligibility. There's no limit to how many hours you can work on campus, right? So if your employer on campus says you can work 40, 50 hours a week, that's okay, right? Once your program is done, your work authorization ends, right? So once you receive your final grade, regardless of the expiration date of your study permit, your work authorization is done, right? Off campus, the same plus just, what I already listed. The only difference is that also you have to be enrolled in post-secondary program that is at least 6 months long, leading to a degree, diploma, or certificate. And also you cannot work more than 24 hours per week in any regular academic sessions. So remember when I talked about academic sessions, I was referring to the fall and the winter semester, right? You may work full-time, more than 24 hours a week, during an academic break, i.e. Reading week, winter closures, and this is specific to certain programs. So remember, academic breaks applies to certain programs, so you have to make sure you meet those definitions first, okay? And you have to be full-time before and after the breaks to maintain that work authorization. So what I mean by that is, in the fall semester, you're full-time, and then during the summer term, you took a scheduled break, you have work eligibility, you work more than 24 hours a week, with the intention of you coming back in the fall semester to be full-time again, to have that work authorization, okay? So just keep those in mind. All right, so now, postgraduate work permit. This is way down, down the road, but it's something for you to be aware of, right? Remember, I already indicated what a PGWP is. It's an open work permit that allows international students to remain and work in Canada after completing their studies. The work experience you obtain through the PGWP may help support your application for permanent residence in Canada. To be eligible for the PGWP, you have to meet the following criteria. You have to have completed your study program. It has to have been an academic or a professional program that is leading to a degree, a certificate, or a diploma. The program has to be at least 8 months long, right? You have to have maintained full-time status during each academic session of your program, with the exception of your final semester, which can be part-time. There's also certain cases where you're allowed to take an authorized leave of absence from your studies for 150 days or less. And this should or may not impact your eligibility for PGWP. There are certain cases where you're not able to be full-time due to a strike or labor disruption at York, and that's okay too. And that shouldn't affect your eligibility to apply for PGWP. All right. So once you received your final grades, you have 180 days to submit your PGWP, right? However, if you're inside Canada, you should apply within 90 days and make sure your study permit is valid, okay? Study permit usually becomes invalid after 90 days of receiving your final grade, okay? So something to keep in mind. So that's pretty much all I have for you for now. But what I would want you to keep in mind is our event calendar, right? So there's a QR code there. Bookmark this page. That's where our events and information is. Anything immigration related, anything event or orientation related will be bookmarked on this page too as well. And also visit our York International website for any information. We have guides to help you with study permit extension. We have guides to help you with initial study permit application, applying for a co-op work permit too as well. And also, you're welcome to attend any of our virtual immigration session. In case you have any questions, you can also email us too as well. And always include your student number in any communication with York University. So thank you for paying attention. Thank you for listening. And I'll pass it on to Perry in case we have any questions that came up throughout this presentation.
Thank you, Gilbert, for your presentation on arriving in Canada. I hope that you folks were able to have a good idea of what to expect when you first arrive at the Canadian border, what kind of documents you need to carry with you, as well as the different types of questions you can anticipate from the officers. We will now open the floor to any questions that you may have. Please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions and we will be addressing them. Okay. I think there is a question here. We have a question asking, is it really common that the border officers reject you once you're there?
So that is a great question. So I'm gonna put it this way, right? So remember, if the immigration officers or CBSA officers find a trace of, credibility in your assessment, yes, that could lead to a negative outcome. Right. For example, if they find that the information that you submitted with your study permit application was not truthful, or there's any fraudulent information that you submitted with your original application, yes, there could be a negative outcome. But if everything is done the way it should be, then you should not be worried at this point. Okay? Remember, just answer the questions truthfully and you should be fine. Okay?
Thank you, Gilbert. As we give everyone a little bit of time to, oh, we have another question. When they ask at the border if we intend to work in Canada, do we say yes or no?
Okay, so you do have work authorization as a student, especially if it's listed on the conditions of your study permit, right? So yes, you can indicate that, but you need to also understand that, you cannot work if you haven't started your program yet, right? So yes, you do have work authorization if you've met certain requirements, so it's okay. But you don't want to give the impression to the Canada Border Services that your intention is to come and work and not studies. Studies is your main priority. It should be your number one goal, and anything after the fact is secondary. Okay?
Thank you, Gilbert. We have another question asking how much money in cash should I bring to Canada?
All right. So you're allowed to bring any amount of money into the country. And I'm going to explain, right? So typically, if you're bringing more than $10,000, you have to disclose it, right? To the officers, you have to let them know you're bringing more than $10,000 into the country, right? What they want to know is where the source of funds are coming from, right? If you're able to disclose where all the funds are coming from, you can bring any amount into the country, provided there's a source of that funds, right? But you have to disclose any amount more than $10,000.
Thank you, Gilbert. Um, Okay, since we have no more questions, we will now take a look at a few of our upcoming webinars and events. You may continue to use the Q&A feature if you have any more questions during the portion of this webinar. And just a small reminder, all the links for the registration will be placed in the chat. Now, as a new incoming international student, it certainly is difficult to think about what to expect in a new country and a new atmosphere. Trust me, our webinar, Student Life at York, will give you the kind of insight you cannot Google. It's the real deal on what life at York is actually like, plus basically a crash course on Canadian culture that'll make settling in for you so much easier. If you're even a little unsure about what to expect, this webinar is definitely for you. Next up, we have look ahead at your first year at York. Now, if there's one session that will save you from being overwhelmed later, it is this one. It lays everything out, what your first year might look like, what kind of schedules you will have, how much you'll be juggling. I remember wishing someone had just shown me this does exactly that. Now, one of our most exciting events, the Fall 2025 International and Exchange Student Orientation. This is where your York journey truly begins. You will be connecting with fellow international students, get helpful information on everything from immigration to health insurance, and even head out on a fun shopping trip for your essentials. It's the kind of start that makes everything feel easier, clearer, and a lot more exciting. The orientation was honestly one of the best parts of my York U journey, and I met some of my closest friends at orientation. You cannot miss this. It is the perfect chance to start building your community. We have a quick video as well to share with you a glimpse of what the day would look like.
Excited to start your adventure at York?
Join us for the International and Exchange Student Orientation and discover all the amazing opportunities waiting for you. Our orientation sessions are designed to give you a strong start, learn about the university health insurance plan, and get vital immigration information. Understanding immigration requirements and your health insurance plan can be daunting. That's why we offer you the chance to meet our advisors directly, ask questions, and get the clarity you need to focus on your studies. Worried about setting up in a new country? We've got you covered. The service fair connects you with essential service providers to help you transition smoothly into the Canadian life. Set up your bank account, choose your ideal phone plan, and discover services that support your success as a York student. To truly feel at home, you will need to explore every corner.
Get to know your new home with our guided campus tours. Discover where your classes are, explore study spots, and get insider tips from the students who know the campus best.
Need essentials? Join our shopping trip. Stock up on everything you need with transportation provided by York International. But most importantly, it's about the people you meet.
Orientation is about more than just information. It's your chance to meet fellow students and build lasting friendships. Join fun activities, share your experiences, and become part of a diverse and welcoming community. Your journey at York University starts right here. Welcome to a place where you will grow, achieve, and create unforgettable memories.
Welcome home.
Alright, now if you see how exciting that video was, we really hope to see you at our orientation. Next up, we have our York International events calendar that can tell you about the dates and times of all the other webinars we have coming up, and you will also be able to register for them directly through the calendar. And before we wrap up, we'd like to encourage everyone to stay connected with us through our social media channels. By following us, you'll receive important updates, event announcements, and opportunities to engage with the York community. And before we end the webinar, I will take a quick look at the chat to see if we have any questions. And looks like we have no more questions. Perfect. Thank you all for attending. Stay connected and informed, and we are looking forward to seeing you at our future webinars and sessions.